4 days after being laid to rest, a young boy who was thought to be dead unexpectedly returns to his family, bringing a terrifying nightmare along with him. The story takes place in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and centers on a woman named Clara who lives with her husband, Juan. One evening, while she is alone at home waiting for Juan to come back, Clara starts hearing eerie voices coming from the kitchen sink drain. What frightens her the most is that the voices appear to be talking about murdering her. Deeply shaken by what she hears and too terrified to stay in the kitchen any longer, she eventually abandons the idea of making dinner. When Juan finally gets home, Clara immediately tells him about the unsettling voices. However, after checking the sink himself, Juan hears absolutely nothing and assumes the sounds were probably caused by the plumbing or some other ordinary household noise. Even with his reassurance, Clara cannot get rid of the feeling that something is seriously wrong. Around 5 o'clock the next morning, while Clara is in the bathroom, Juan is suddenly awakened by a series of heavy bangs repeatedly hitting the wall of their house. Assuming the noise is coming from his neighbor Walter's home, since Walter is known for staying active late into the night, Juan angrily pounds on the wall before walking next door to confront him. But despite ringing the doorbell several times, no one answers. Frustrated, Juan eventually heads back inside. Only moments later, he realizes the banging is not coming from Walter's house at all. It is coming from his own bathroom. At the same time, he notices that the shower is still running. Juan rushes toward the bathroom, only to discover a horrifying scene. Clara has died under mysterious circumstances, and her lifeless body is suspended in midair, violently smashing against the bathroom wall over and over as if controlled by an unseen force. After the incident, Juan is visited by 3 paranormal investigators named Jano, Mora, and Rosentalk. They are convinced that Juan had nothing to do with his wife's death. To support their theory, they show him the details of a similar case that occurred in the United States back in 1998, where the victim died under nearly identical circumstances. While answering their questions, Juan remembers something unusual. For the past 2 weeks, Walter, who lives next door, has regularly been making strange noises inside his house during odd hours, especially in the early morning while the rest of the neighborhood is asleep. The story then jumps back to several weeks before Clara's death and shifts its focus to Walter. For some time, Walter has been dealing with a series of disturbing supernatural events inside his home. Unable to cope with the situation by himself, he seeks help from several paranormal specialists and is eventually advised to get in touch with Mora. Walter immediately calls Mora's office and attempts to explain the bizarre incidents taking place in his house. Unfortunately, Mora's assistant tells him that she is unavailable at the moment and advises him to call again later. That night, while sleeping, Walter is abruptly awakened when his bed begins moving by itself for no apparent reason. Although he lives alone and knows no one else is in the house, he repeatedly looks around the room and checks beneath the bed because he cannot shake the feeling that something is hiding underneath it. Every time he checks, however, there is nothing there. The following morning, Walter wakes up to find his entire house in complete disarray. Furniture and household items have been moved and scattered everywhere without any reasonable explanation. As the unexplained events grow even more intense, Walter contacts Mora once again. This time, however, her assistant refuses to send help, explaining that Mora does not take on investigations unless there is solid evidence to support the claims. Determined to prove that something paranormal is happening, Walter sets up a camera in his bedroom, pointing it directly at his bed in hopes of recording whatever has been occurring during the night. Meanwhile, Juan visits Walter to complain about a crack that has recently started appearing in the wall separating their houses. He also brings up the strange sounds that frequently come from Walter's home during the early hours of the morning. Walter chooses not to reveal the truth and simply tells Juan that he has been doing renovation work around the house. Later that same night, after positioning the camera to record his bed, Walter experiences yet another disturbing event. Suddenly, the lights in Walter's bedroom go out. His camera tripod topples over on its own, and he notices a dark shadow forming on one of the walls. Curious and unsettled, Walter checks the footage captured before the camera fell. To his horror, he sees a mysterious figure standing beside his bed. The strange being slowly walks toward a wardrobe before vanishing from sight. Fearing for his safety, Walter grabs a handgun and cautiously opens the wardrobe where the figure disappeared. To his surprise, there is nothing inside. Convinced that the threat is gone, he starts reviewing the recording again. What he never realizes is that the mysterious entity is now silently standing directly behind him. The next morning, a neighborhood boy named John walks into Walter's yard to drink water from the outdoor faucet. Walter angrily scolds him and orders him to leave. As John slowly walks away, he fails to notice a bus approaching behind him and is hit in a tragic accident, dying instantly. John's sudden death completely shatters his mother, Alicia. A few days later, relatives, friends, and neighbors gather to attend the young boy's funeral. However, 4 days after John is buried, something far more disturbing begins to unfold. Late one night, Alicia notices muddy footprints leading from outside the house all the way inside. Realizing that something is terribly wrong, Funes, a police officer and Alicia's former boyfriend, asks Jano, a retired forensic investigator with experience in unusual cases, to assist him. When Jano arrives, he is immediately horrified by what he discovers. After examining the severe damage to John's fingers along with several clues inside the house, he concludes that the boy's corpse may have clawed its way out of the grave over several days before somehow returning home. In other words, the body that should have remained buried had inexplicably escaped from its grave and found its way back to the house. Understanding how dangerous and impossible the situation is, Jano insists that John's body must be buried again before anyone else finds out. He explains that no legal investigation could reasonably account for such an event. If the truth became public, Alicia could easily be dismissed as mentally unstable and face even greater difficulties. Before moving the body, Jano asks Funes to give Alicia a sedative so she will not have to witness what is about to happen. The following day, while outside Alicia's home, Jano runs into Mora, who is taking photographs of Walter's house. Even though Walter has not been seen for quite some time, Mora says that someone actually responded from inside when she rang the doorbell. Jano already knows Mora by reputation as a respected paranormal investigator and had even attended several of her lectures in the past. After speaking for a while, he brings her inside Alicia's house to examine John's body, which is still there. Unlike everyone else, Mora is not especially surprised by what she sees because she has encountered similar cases before. She explains that she came to Walter's house after receiving several photographs documenting unexplained events that had occurred there, which convinced her to investigate the property herself.
While Jano and Mora discuss the possible connection between Walter's house and the disturbing incidents affecting the neighborhood, another young boy named Tom, who had been John's friend, enters Alicia's yard to retrieve a toy that had landed there. Only moments later, a loud scream echoes through the yard, causing Jano and Mora to react immediately. Fearing that John's corpse could begin moving again, they place the body inside a freezer and block the freezer door with a flower pot to keep it securely shut. Without either of them noticing, Tom secretly records everything using his mother's phone. A short time later, Funes arrives and asks for the freezer to be unplugged. The moment the electricity is disconnected, an eerie sound begins coming from inside the freezer. Eventually, John's body, still inside the freezer, is transported away and buried for a second time. This time, they plan to cover the grave with a thick layer of concrete to eliminate any chance of the corpse escaping again. The story then shifts back to the present, shortly after Clara's mysterious death. Jano, Mora, and Rosentalk visit Juan and ask for his permission to begin investigating the strange events occurring throughout the neighborhood. The investigators suspect that the bizarre events surrounding Clara's house, Walter's home, and Alicia's residence are all connected, since every incident has taken place within a very small area. Juan agrees to let them investigate the neighborhood. Mora remains at Juan's house, Jano stays near Alicia's home, and Rosentalk teams up with Funes to examine Walter's property. As the investigation gets underway, Juan admits that he has not seen Walter for quite some time. Once inside the abandoned house, Rosentalk discovers numerous mysterious symbols and markings that are only visible under ultraviolet light. Although Walter is nowhere to be found, every room they search reveals something even more unsettling. Based on her previous experiences, Mora instructs Funes to keep the house completely dark, explaining that paranormal activity is often much easier to detect in darkness. Rosentalk also makes it clear that their mission is not to eliminate whatever is haunted, but to collect enough evidence to understand exactly what they are dealing with. Each investigator begins placing specialized equipment throughout the 3 locations connected to the case. Not long afterward, Jano receives a phone call from an unknown person asking where Alicia is staying. As soon as he gives the caller the phone number of the location where Alicia is temporarily living, the person abruptly hangs up without another word. Shortly afterward, Jano also listens to a voicemail from Tom's mother. She asks about the strange video her son secretly recorded, showing Mora and Jano placing John's corpse inside the freezer. As the investigation continues, bizarre events begin unfolding almost simultaneously at all 3 houses. At Juan's home, Mora's detection equipment suddenly starts moving by itself without any visible cause. Meanwhile, Walter's house becomes the scene of equally disturbing activity. Rosentalk and Funes discover several pieces of silverware hanging beneath a cabinet, as though they are suspended by an incredibly strong magnetic force. Before either of them can react, one of the knives suddenly flies through the air and stabs Rosentalk in the hand. Only moments later, furniture and various household objects begin shifting, floating, and moving on their own without anyone touching them. At the same time, similar supernatural phenomena begin occurring inside Alicia's house as well, convincing Rosentalk that every incident is part of the same larger mystery. He becomes increasingly certain that Walter's house is the central point from which all of the paranormal activity in the neighborhood originates. As the unexplained events continue escalating beyond anything logic can explain, Funes begins to panic.
He calls Jano and tells him that he wants to abandon the investigation and leave before things become even more dangerous. While speaking on the phone, however, Jano notices something deeply unsettling. For a brief moment, he sees someone standing in the front room of Walter's house, even though Funes should still be in the kitchen, which is located much farther inside the building. The impossible sight strengthens their belief that whatever they are dealing with is capable of distorting both space and human perception. Meanwhile, Mora starts recognizing a pattern in the strange phenomena. She notices that every time water is involved in her experiments, her detection devices react immediately. This leads her to suspect that the entity haunting the neighborhood has a powerful connection to water. To test her theory, Mora continues examining the large crack in the wall of Juan's house, which has seemed suspicious from the very beginning and looks nothing like ordinary structural damage. At the same time, Rosentalk shares another important discovery with Funes. During his examination of Walter's house, he realizes that the mysterious entity haunting the building can only be seen from specific viewing angles. When observed normally, it is almost completely invisible. However, when viewed from a different perspective, its shape suddenly becomes visible, almost as if it exists in another reality overlapping with the human world. This discovery leads Rosentalk to believe that the creature may not belong to their world at all, but instead originates from another dimension. The revelation terrifies Funes even more. Unable to stay in Walter's house any longer, he leaves immediately and heads to Alicia's home in search of Jano. When he arrives, Jano is nowhere to be found. The house has been completely torn apart, with shattered glass covering several rooms. In the middle of the eerie silence, Funes hears faint screams coming from inside a cabinet. As he searches for the source, he stumbles upon a horrifying sight. Jano's body appears to be trapped inside the cabinet in a way that defies all logic. Even stranger, Jano cannot be seen when the cabinet doors are opened normally. Funes only manages to find him after breaking through another section of the cabinet and looking from a completely different angle. It is as though Jano no longer fully exists within the same reality as everyone else. The impossible scene convinces Funes that Jano has somehow been pulled into another space connected to the supernatural phenomenon spreading throughout the neighborhood. At that very same moment, Mora makes an equally shocking discovery. Hidden behind the enormous crack in the wall of Juan's house, she finds Walter trapped in a condition remarkably similar to Jano's, as though both men are suspended somewhere between the human world and another dimension. Not long afterward, Funes finds Mora and tells her everything he has witnessed. Realizing that the investigation has become far too dangerous, Mora immediately tries to contact Rosentalk and persuade him to suspend the operation for the time being. However, Rosentalk never answers. Mora then explains the theory she has been developing throughout the investigation. According to her, the beings responsible for these terrifying events are not ghosts in the traditional sense. Instead, she believes they are entities originating from another dimension. Her theory also reinforces Rosentalk's conclusion that Walter's house is the focal point of the entire phenomenon. Mora believes a dimensional rift or invisible fracture exists there, allowing these otherworldly beings to cross into the human world. Mora goes on to explain that water appears to be the entity's primary method of travel, communication, reproduction, and even their way of influencing human beings. This could explain why so many of the strange events throughout the neighborhood are connected to water.
She even believes John's death may not have been accidental, pointing out that shortly before the fatal accident, he drank water from the faucet in Walter's yard. According to Mora, because these beings originate from another dimension, they cannot always be perceived by the human eye. They become visible only from certain perspectives, as though they exist between two overlapping realities. She also theorizes that the structure of their bodies may be unlike anything found in the human world. Before Mora can explain her theory any further, something horrifying suddenly happens. She is violently pulled into the massive crack in the wall. The entire incident unfolds so quickly that Funes can do nothing except watch in complete shock. The terrifying experience causes Funes to suffer a heart attack, although he fortunately survives. As he struggles to catch his breath and regain his composure, he fails to notice a strange creature slowly emerging from the opening in the wall. At the same time, Rosentalk is facing a nightmare of his own inside Walter's house. While searching the building, he watches as a door behind him slowly swings open by itself, followed by the appearance of a mysterious figure stepping out of the darkness. After recovering slightly, Funes tries to call for help, only to discover that his phone has completely run out of battery. Not long afterward, furniture throughout the house begins sliding across the floor on its own, as if an invisible force is dragging everything toward the enormous crack in the wall, which has now widened into a massive opening. The bizarre phenomenon lasts only a short time before the mysterious creature disappears once again, without leaving behind a single trace. A short while later, Alicia arrives to meet Funes. After watching Tom's video showing Mora and Jono placing John's corpse into a freezer, Alicia becomes convinced that Funes and the investigators have been hiding the truth from her. Funes desperately tries to explain that everything they did was intended to protect her and stop the situation from becoming even worse. However, in the middle of the chaos, he pleads with Alicia to take him to the hospital because he is still struggling to breathe after the heart attack. But as he approaches Alicia's car, he is confronted with an even more disturbing sight. Sitting in the back seat is John's corpse. Somehow, Alicia has dug up her son's grave and brought his body with her. Realizing that the situation has descended into complete madness, Funes immediately returns to his own car and drives away as fast as he can. After pulling over in a secluded area to calm himself down, Funes receives a message over his police radio from another officer, who says he is currently at Alicia's house. Earlier that day, Alicia had gone to the police station looking for Funes. When no one could reach him, the officer decided to check on her personally. Hearing this, Funes urgently warns the officer to leave the neighborhood before it is too late. Just before ending the transmission, however, the officer casually mentions seeing Jono wandering around the property while acting in a very strange manner. After everything he has witnessed that night, Funes becomes convinced that something terrible is happening to everyone connected to the investigation. Believing that the supernatural phenomenon is centered around the homes of Walter, Clara, and Alicia, Funes makes one final desperate decision. He returns to the neighborhood determined to destroy whatever is responsible for the horrifying events that have already claimed so many lives. Along with taking Alicia somewhere safe, he plans to burn down every house believed to be connected to the entities. However, after arriving at Alicia's home and pouring gasoline throughout the building, Funes discovers Alicia's lifeless body inside.
The film never explains exactly how she died, but the discovery convinces him that the situation has spiraled completely beyond anyone's control. Overcome with despair, Funes decides to carry out his plan and set the house on fire. Strangely, every time he tries to light a match, the flame is extinguished before it can ignite the gasoline. Looking more carefully, Funes believes he can see Jano standing nearby, repeatedly blowing out the flame before it catches. With no other choice remaining, Funes fires his pistol into the gasoline, creating an explosion that engulfs the house in flames. 1 year later, Juan is being questioned by the police. The detectives ask whether he has had any contact with Jano, Mora, or Rosentalk, since all three investigators disappeared without a trace after beginning their investigation of the neighborhood. Juan confirms that the three researchers did visit him while investigating Clara's death and even showed him evidence related to the mysterious case. The officers then question him about Funes. Juan explains that the last time he saw him was during John's funeral, where Alicia was also present. According to the official police investigation, Funes is believed to have started the fires that destroyed the homes of Juan, Walter, and Alicia. Even after an entire year has passed, Funes has never been found and is officially listed as a fugitive. However, just as the interrogation is about to end, Juan suddenly looks toward the doorway behind the officers and calmly says that Rosentalk is standing there. What makes the moment even more unsettling is Juan's claim that Rosentalk's face appears horribly burned. Strangely, no one else in the room can see anyone standing there. Only seconds later, a chair suddenly begins sliding across the floor by itself before violently flying toward the officers. Rosentalk's mysterious appearance in the film's closing moments strongly suggests that the nightmare haunting the neighborhood has never truly ended. Even though the houses believed to be at the center of the phenomenon were destroyed by fire, the true nature of the entities and the mystery surrounding them remain unresolved. And with that, the story comes to an end.